Welcome to the fascinating world of Vedas, undisputedly the oldest written literary and philosophical text in the world. From the mundane to the intellectual, the Vedas are packed with incomparable insights into virtually every aspect of life. Compiled over several centuries, the Vedas leave no aspect of the human condition untouched. Above all, they give us a ringside view of the people, the society, and the culture of those times. And helping us understand the intricacies of these ancient texts is Dr. G. Ramakrishna, renowned professor of English and distinguished scholar of Sanskrit and Vedic literature.
And therefore, in the Almirah of books chronologically arranged, if there be any of human making, the first place will always belong to the Rig Veda.
Graduating from the University of Mysore, Dr. G. Ramakrishna obtained his Masters in English Literature from the University of Wales, United Kingdom. On his return to India, he joined the prestigious National College in Bangalore as Professor of English Literature. In his long and illustrious career at this venerated institution, Dr. G. Ramakrishna earned the love and respect of students not only as an excellent teacher, but also as a friend, philosopher, and guide. A prolific writer, Dr. G. Ramakrishna has authored several books on the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and other Puranic texts. A man of many parts, Dr. G. Ramakrishna is an accomplished exponent of yoga, has a keen ear for music, is an avid trekker, and an inveterate globetrotter. And so, dear viewers, here is Dr. G. Ramakrishna in his own words. In this part, Dr. Ramakrishna gives us an overview of Vedic literature with particular emphasis on the Rig Veda. He lays out with broad strokes the gist of his discourse, the purpose of which is to help us have a better understanding of Vedic texts, shorn of the misconceptions, irrationalities, and untruths that have crept into them over the ages.
In the course of a few talks, but we shall try to understand the most fundamental aspects of this literature. Unfortunately, distortedly represented by several, even scholars, let alone the laymen. A general understanding of Rig Veda is going to help us not only in understanding the text and the milieu from which it arose, but also the larger question of the base of Indian culture. What exactly is the contribution made by Vedic literature to the flourishing of culture in our country? And naturally, we will have to look at the historical importance of these texts. And when you look at the contents of these texts, you cannot but recognize the great poetic excellence that we associate with this text, which sometimes is ignored, but that is a very crucial aspect of the text. And then you also get to know a lot about the aspects of life of the period, the significant thoughts of that period, the character of the deities, who cannot be equated with deities carrying the same names as they do in the Rig Veda, because they have undergone a very vast metamorphosis in the course of the evolution of mythological constructions and so on. But then, what does the Rig Veda itself have to say about these deities and how do they characterize them, etc.? And then the philosophical speculations about which we keep listening a lot, and imputing things which are not there in the text also is one of the hobbies of some scholars in our country, and therefore to disabuse some of these things in the study of any ancient text. I think we will have to acquaint ourselves with the text directly. Also, we must get to know about the difficulty in understanding the text at times. It's not that every student of Vedic literature and Rig Veda in particular will be able to precisely understand the exact implications of given passages in the text. They are sometimes very ambiguous. Sometimes from the linguistic point of view, they present many hurdles in analysis. But the text is there, and therefore we will have to come to terms with the text in the best possible way. In other words, our idea is to penetrate into the culture of the Vedic people to the extent possible in these talks, of which this happens to be the first. Well, I must confess that I am not an authority on the subject, but a student with no pretensions, and therefore I think I shall be very objective, like anybody should be who tackles this text, about which so much is said day in and day out. So much so, we have been blinded by certain of the responses from even very well-known scholars. Be that as it may, our purpose is, in short, to obtain a bird's eye view of what actually there is in the Rig Veda. This is the crux of the matter. What are the attitudes and patterns of life reflected in the Rig Veda, for example? In this context, I may mention that I have authored a book called Rig Veda Praveshike in Kannada, which has gone into 3 editions so far. Anything that you understand in the Rig Veda must naturally lead you to a discussion regarding the culture of the period. There is no one monolithic kind of culture in the Rig Veda or in our long tradition. Now, with this kind of a preface, I think I shall proceed to discuss a few things about the text itself and various things connected with the text. What needs to be emphasized is that plurality has been the most significant characteristic of Indian culture through the ages, starting from the Vedic period. The opinions, for example, articulated in the Rig Veda by different sections of the community of that period, they are not identical. Their perspective is not something which is common to all of them. Each one of them defines the perspective for himself in the context in which he lives and in the context in which he interacts with his fellow beings and maybe the opponents. How are you going to deal with your opponents, for example? In other words, by plurality we include the people of different tribes who have inhabited in our country, the various cross sections of the community through the ages, Panchamas, for example, the denominations other than Vedic. They may not find mention in the Veda. That doesn't mean that they are not archaic in their own way. Now, Rig Veda is an integral part of Indian culture, and therefore, whatever methods you adopt for dissecting culture, let us say of the 6th century, 10th century, well, that must be true of the dissection of the Rig Vedic texts as well. So let us start with a few fundamentals. The fact that ancient India deserves to have the prime position among literary works in the world is undoubtedly true. It's the most ancient text in human history that has come down to us in such an extensive and written form. There may be more ancient civilizations, but we do not have literary records of any ancient civilization to the extent to which we have of the Rig Veda. And therefore, in the almirah of books chronologically arranged, if there be any of human making, the first place will always belong to the Rig Veda. In our tradition, Vedic literature has been usually designated as Trayi, coming from the word three. So these are the three samhitas, collections of poems, prose passages, couplets, maybe in different forms. Trayi means the three Vedas. So usually we speak of the four Vedas, but in Indian tradition there has been a very strong advocacy in favor of Vedas being three, Atharva Veda being not included in the Vedic law. Because of the difference in the approach to life, the topics chosen for depiction, in other words, certain attitudes towards life and the kind of ideas that they profess. Traditionally, Trayi includes only the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda and the Samaveda. Now just pose a question to yourself. Why is Atharva Veda not included among the Vedas, although it is as ancient as the Rig Vedic text, for example? Was there any inhibition that prevented them from accepting it as something equal in its importance to the Rig Veda? Because that is also the product of people of that age, like the Rig Veda is. When I say product of the age, of course, one might start raising eyebrows and say, what is this? Veda is supposed to be apaurushaya. In the word apaurushaya, you see the word purusha, person. Apaurushaya is something that is produced by no person whatsoever. It has descended from somewhere on its own. The seers of the ancient period saw it. They did not write it. They did not construct it. Well, for the sake of offering your reverence to the text of such an ancient period, if you say it is apaurushaya, metaphorically it is fine. But if we start taking anything literally, saying that it was not at all composed by any individual or groups of individuals, then it becomes difficult to understand the psychology of people who do it. There is nothing that is apaurushaya in this world. Several of the traditions in the history of mankind have adopted this stand of considering that some texts are perennial, not owing its origin to any individual or groups of individuals and so on. That's why I said it is to be taken metaphorically and not literally. I have no mission whatsoever to convert anyone to perceive things in exactly the way in which I do, or some of the people of my kind do. That's not the objective of the discussion at all. Now, what differentiates the three Vedas, namely Rig Veda, Yajur Veda and Sam Veda, from Atharva Veda? But the content is what differentiates these texts. If you have a number of hymns which have a bearing on rituals over the centuries in the other three Vedas, in the Atharva Veda that thing is not present. I don't suppose that many of the hymns of the Atharva Veda are employed in the course of performing a sacrifice, for example. The entire Yajur Veda is something which prescribes how a ritual is to be performed. More than the thought, there is no difference between the thought of the Rig Veda and the thought of the Yajur Veda. But then, while one is a collection of songs, the other one is an employment of the songs in rituals and so on. I need not go into the details, but the reason why Atharva Veda is kept out of the gamut of Vedic literature, which is usually referred to as Trayi, is that from the point of view of content, there is some kind of a difference. That is more a folk tradition than the Rig Veda is. Well, as we shall later on see by going to a few of the hymns in the Atharva Veda and the Rig Veda, maybe you will be able to understand it much better later on. It is only by going to the text that one can form judgment about the exact nature of these texts. And that is the way I think we should proceed. But there have been aberrations in our evaluation of these extremely interesting texts. Rig Veda is one of the most interesting texts, even from the point of view of literature, not only for our history of culture and things of that kind. But you see, somehow there is a fanciful kind of interpretation when it comes to the ancient texts like the Rig Veda. But at the Manipur Science Congress, one of the delegates in his presentation said, among other things, and I almost quote him verbatim, he said that Stephen Hawking, one of the most eminent scientists that we have known during contemporary times, this man said that Stephen Hawking has said somewhere that there is more science in the Rig Veda than what we think it has. So you have quantified the amount of science you have in the Rig Veda. And then Stephen Hawking says, no, this quantity is not enough. It has much more than what you have recognized. I mean, having reverence for the Rig Veda is one thing, and hyperboles which are absolutely baseless, and then bringing in Stephen Hawking to adduce the veracity of your claim, this is preposterous, to say the least. That is not the way in which we should express our reverence to an ancient text. Objectivity demands that you go to the text and identify what exactly it contains and then say these 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So if I say there is science in the Rig Veda, I must come up with an analysis of the Rig Vedic text and then say this is the element of science here, and compare it with something else, and then study the way in which a scientific idea has evolved and so on. Where did Stephen Hawking say this? I am also familiar with some of the works of Stephen Hawking. But I never came across this kind of a statement that the Veda contains more science than we think it has. What kind of thought was there in the mind of Stephen Hawking when he said this? First of all, did he know the Rig Veda? Why would he be saying this? I mean, a scientist is not going to make offhanded statements like that. To cut it short, I must say that thrusting the most modern on the most ancient is not a desirable way of developing our scholarship, understanding of the text. The most ancient, and then you want to find the most modern in the most ancient. Is the most ancient so useless if it does not contain the most modern? It has its own contribution to make, and if you understand that well, that is the end of it. You don't have to thrust these ideas and say all these things were already there and so on. That is not the way to honor a text. That is mutilation of the text. One is the historical approach and the other is an anti-historical approach. Any person who does not sincerely make an attempt to understand Vedic literature in general and Rig Veda in particular, from the historical point of view, is doing a disservice to the Vedic lore.